Hi everyone, welcome back to Julia's story. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from in the comments. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Sit back, relax, and let's get into the story. Rain makes a different kind of sound when it hits concrete that no one owns. It comes down in a thin sheet, then breaks into bright needles on the edge of the overpass where I sleep. The bench is metal and remembers bones. I had a blanket until an hour ago. I watched an old man's teeth knock together like dice and tucked it over his shoulders while he mumbled thank you into the steam of his breath. I kept my boots. I kept my voice. I kept the piece of stubborn inside me that refuses to go missing. Cars hiss past in a steady line. Their lights turn the wet into a mirror. I count them without meaning to, the way a person counts their own heartbeat when the night feels too wide. A siren wails, then decides against us. Somewhere under the bridge a shopping cart rattles and the sound climbs the column like a tin ladder. A pair of white sneakers stops on the far side of my bench. Clean. Too clean for this place. An umbrella tilts and lowers, and a man leans into my corner as if he is asking permission from the rain to be here. He is tall. Dark coat. The kind of face that looks expensive until it softens and gives itself back. Soup, he says, voice low, not loud enough to make anyone else flinch. It is hot. No strings. He holds out a paper cup with a lid that already shines a little from the rain. His hand does not shake. Mine does, but only because I am cold and the smell crawls under my ribs and tells me it could help. I take the cup. The lid snaps under my thumb. Steam runs out like a small ghost. Chicken and ginger. I lift it to my mouth and feel my jaw forget to be tight. He stays where he is, umbrella tilted so the drip line misses my knees. He does not talk like he is trying to make the scene into a lesson. He looks at the old man under my blanket, at the 3 bags that hold my life in different shapes, at the spot where the concrete lip keeps the wind from being the last word. Do you need a ride to shelter? He asks. I can make a call. I know the way, I say, because I do. Sometimes the bed is a fight I do not have in me. He nods. He does not ask why. He does not pick at me with curious fingers pretending to be kindness. He adjusts the umbrella so the rain stops needling my shoulder. His coat catches the spray on the outside edge and darkens by an inch. Name, he says, soft. So I can say it and not just think it. Lena, I say, and the night tastes different when it hears my name out loud. Lena, he repeats, like he is trying on a pair of shoes he does not want to scuff. I am Adrian. A car idles at the curb. The driver waits with the patience of a person who is paid to ignore weather. The windows fog on the inside. I see a figure in the back seat, a flash of a white dress with a coat thrown over it and hair the color of money under light. The door opens, a hand waves impatiently, then the figure melts back into the leather. Adrian does not turn. He keeps the umbrella over my knees and lets the car be a sound and not a command. You are expected, I say. My voice does not ask. It states. I am, he says. Rehearsal dinner. Everyone will survive if I am late. He shifts his weight and looks past me to the old man. The blanket rises and falls, a slow tide that convinces the body to stay. Adrian notices the way I tucked the edges under themselves. He notices my boots. He notices that I did not take his help with my eyes turned up like a request. Thank you, he says, not to himself and not to me exactly, but to the part of the night that arranged this meeting without making a show of it. Soup will do it, I say. More than words. He smiles, small and quick. He takes something from his coat and sets it on the lid of my cup. A business card, heavy paper, simple ink. No glossy logo. Just a name and a number that belongs to a world that rarely looks down from its windows. I could send a car in the morning, he says. A good shelter. Clean showers. A bag with what you ask for, not what exists in a box somewhere. If you say no, the car will not stop. If you say yes and change your mind, the car will not wait. It will come, and you can wave it on, and it will leave, and no one will take offense. You like rules, I say. I like people not being trapped by favors, he says. A laugh lifts at the edge of my throat. It warms more than the soup. The rain shifts to a finer spray. A second car slows behind the first. A man leans out the back window of the second car, the kind of grin that burns when it touches. He calls Adrian's name as if he owns it. Adrian nods once without turning, and the window slides up like a tongue choosing silence. I gave my blanket away, I say. I saw, he says. I brought something better than a blanket. He steps closer and sets the umbrella's handle against my palm. The wood is smooth, warmer than it looks. The fabric is black and tight and does not flap like cheap things do. I do not take it from him. He lets it rest where my hand can close without making it an order. This is yours, he says. Use it. Give it away. Sell it. Break it into pieces and build a tent for a cat. Your call. The old man under my blanket coughs once, then turns, deepening the cocoon I made of wool and threadbare kindness. The rain finds a new angle and tries again. The umbrella holds. People will look, I say, when I stand up with a thing like this over my head. They already look, he says, and the honesty in it is simple and kind. Let them look at you dry. He checks his watch, not the way a rude person does, but the way a person marks the city's rhythm against his own breath. He points to the card on my soup lid. Call if you want that ride, he says. A driver will circle the corner by dawn whether you do or not. He will have a thermos of tea and a bag with toothpaste and a sweater. If someone else waves him down first, they get it. It is not a test. I nod. I lift the cup. The ginger finds a place in me and builds a little fire. He steps back, reclaiming the umbrella only when he is no longer shielding my knees, and tilts it toward his own shoulder. The car door opens on the first vehicle. The impatient figure shifts again, as if stage lights are waiting somewhere I cannot see. He gives me a look that is not pity and not apology. It is a look that says he recognized me and expects to recognize me again. Good night, Lena, he says. Good night, Adrian, I say, and I do not reach for the world that belongs to him. Not yet. He walks to the car. The driver moves with practiced grace. The door shuts. The car rolls. The second car floats after it, sleek and hungry. They vanish into the rain, two dark fish slipping back into a river that has decided to forget my name for now. I finish the soup and let the cup sit under the bench to catch the drip from the seam where the overpass leaks. The business card lies on my knee, rain flecks drying in a pale spatter that does not erase the letters. I hold it up to the streetlight and read the name that belongs on billboards and magazine covers. It is the same name I have seen on newspapers abandoned on bus seats, next to a woman with eyes like glass and a smile that never touches anything alive. A gust pushes a tabloid across the pavement, pages flapping like a bird with a broken plan. It catches against my boot. The cover stares up at me. The woman with the glass eyes. A new man at her side. A headline in hungry ink. Wedding of the season. The byline lists the venue that stares out over the river. Tomorrow. I slide the card into the pocket sewn into the inside of my jacket, the place where I keep photographs of who I used to be. The umbrella leans against my knee. The blanket rises and falls over an old man who will wake warmer than he slept. Rain softens. Night leans closer to morning. The sound of tires changes when the first delivery trucks begin their routes. I curl my fingers around the umbrella handle and let the wood teach my hand what holding feels like again. The card warms against my ribs, a small rectangle carrying a door I can open or leave shut. By dawn, I will have to decide which pavement to walk toward, the corner where a driver will circle with tea and a sweater, or the alley where the old ways wait with their familiar cold. The choice sits with me under the bridge and refuses to move until I do. By dawn, the rain thinned to a mist that made the air taste like metal. The driver rolled up to the corner exactly when Adrian said he would. The window lowered a few inches and a paper cup lifted into view. Tea, strong and sweet. A canvas tote waited on the back seat. Toothpaste. A new toothbrush. Thick socks. A sweater the color of bread. No speeches. No camera. I took the tea and the tote and told the driver to circle the block once while I woke the old man and tucked my blanket tighter around his shoulders. When the car came back, I slid in and kept my boots on the floor like I was afraid the car might swallow them. We stopped at the shelter that keeps its promise most days. I checked in with the woman at the desk and her clipboard that knows everyone by first name. She handed me a towel and nodded at the row of stalls with their chipped tiles and their stubborn hooks. The water came hot and then hotter. I stood there with my head tipped back and counted to 50, then to 100. Then I tried to remember the last time my scalp had felt clean all the way through. I scrubbed until the grit let go. I let the steam loosen a face I did not owe to a mirror. I stepped back into the towel, then into the new socks. The sweater slipped over my shoulders and turned my body from a handful of edges into something with a center. I packed my old shirt with the careful fold of a person who keeps track of what they have, even when it is not much. I kept the boots, wiped them with the edge of the towel, and told myself they would do just fine. The driver waited in the hallway with a clean patience. He handed me a phone in a slim cardboard box. Not brand new, not stolen, charged and ready. One number sat in the recent calls list. Adrian. The screen buzzed and the name appeared as if the day were making a decision for me. Lena, he said when I answered. Breakfast is possible. So is quiet. I will follow your lead. You made the offer, I said. Say the whole thing while I am dry and awake. He did not rush. He told me about a wedding that did not belong to him anymore, a woman who had been part of his story in ways that cost him, a room that would love a spectacle more than it loved truth. He told me he wanted to walk into that room with a person who would not flatter it. He told me he would arrange a stylist who did not treat people like inventory. He told me I could leave at any point and the car would be there in under 5 minutes. No speeches about rescue. No script. I am not a prop, I said. You are not, he said. If you say yes, I will make sure the room learns that quickly. Then we will see how quickly I can make a room listen, I said, and heard my voice find a line inside itself. The driver took me to a small studio that smelled like clean hair and lavender. A woman greeted me with the kind of smile that does not pry. She did not talk about transformations. She asked what made me feel like myself. I told her I did not need to look rich. I needed to look like I had been seen. She nodded and washed my hair without fuss. She trimmed 2 ends and stopped. She handed me a black dress with sleeves and pockets and a hem that hit just below my knee. It fit like a yes I gave to myself. She zipped it and stepped back and adjusted nothing at all. No glitter. No laugh track. She placed a simple pair of flats by my feet and offered a small clutch. I slid my phone and a folded bill inside and felt ready in a way that had nothing to do with cost. Adrian called to say he was on his way. His voice carried a new edge, not nerves, attention. He arrived in a dark suit that made the room behave. He stopped when he saw me and the edge softened. He did not say beautiful and he did not say brave. He said, "You look like Lena." That was the point. We ate breakfast at a diner that let the coffee be strong and the eggs be eggs. He asked me what I wanted the day to do and what lines I would not let it cross. I said I would not be caught alone on a balcony while someone cashed a favor. I said I would not be introduced with a story that took away my name. I said if anyone tried to turn kindness into a performance, I would call it what it was. He told me his assistant would set a rule with the staff that no one escorted me anywhere I did not ask to go. He told me my exit plan would be printed on a card in my clutch. I checked. It was there. A number. A name. The words "Leave now" in plain type. Clean. Enough. Outside, the city was all glass and river. The hotel where they had booked their day rose like a lantern. Cars lined the curb. Photographers arranged themselves in small herds. The lobby buzzed the way a beehive would if someone taught it to wear cologne. Adrian's assistant met us by the elevators with a clipboard, a kind face, and the skill of someone who knew how to set a tone with 6 words. "Here are the rules we posted," she said. "No unapproved photos. No balcony access without staff. No one names a guest without consent. My name tag read only Lena. No last name. No pity attached." She handed me a laminated card for the security desk and something else, a neat map of the floor with 2 small stars. One marked a quiet room with a kettle and a door that locked. One marked the fastest route to the side exit where the car would wait, engine on, driver ready. The elevator's mirror threw us back at ourselves. My dress looked like someone had pressed the word respect into fabric. Adrian looked like a man who had lost weight in the right place, the kind that a person sheds when he puts down something heavy he was not meant to carry alone. He pressed the button for the top floor and the car slid upward without a sound. We stepped into a hallway wide enough for 2 pianos. Flowers breathed from tall vases. A soft song drifted from the main room, all strings and money. The assistant walked ahead to clear the door. Someone laughed, the kind of laugh that bruises from the inside. I heard it and felt my shoulders go square. A man in a pale suit crossed the corridor, phone raised just enough to catch me as I came into the light. He saw Adrian and lowered it by an inch, not enough to be anything but a warning. A woman with camera lashes glanced over her shoulder and whispered a word that tasted like the opposite of kindness. Charity. The word found me and fell to the floor with a small crack. I did not pick it up. The assistant did not smile. She stood in the man's line of sight until he took 3 steps back and made room for us to pass. We stopped at the threshold. On the far side of the room, a bride in a dress that cost a car lifted her chin. Vivian. She saw Adrian. She saw me. Her mouth curved into something that wanted to be sweet and failed. The groom at her side leaned in and said a word into her ear. She laughed without moving her eyes. Adrian looked at me. Not for permission. For confirmation. I let the air in. I lifted my chin to its level place. I took the card in my clutch and pressed it against my palm until the ink warmed to my skin. The coordinator waved her clipboard and the doors began to open. Soft hinges, soft music, mouths softening to greet what they thought they were about to see. The room tilted toward us like it had rehearsed our entrance without asking which parts we meant to play. The doors finished their slow swing and the light found us. The step that would carry me into that glass palace waited under my heel. I felt the dress move, the flat's grip, the new phone rest against the bones of my hand. Somewhere near the balcony, a lens lifted and then lowered. In a corner, a server with a small gold name tag paused to watch with her chin high. Noor. I marked her and kept walking. I set my foot on the polished floor and the room learned my name without being told. The venue did not bother hiding what it was. Glass stacked on glass. Chandeliers like frost caught in a net. A river unrolled itself beyond the windows and pretended not to stare. Music drifted over the carpet, strings and a drum that kept time like a polite heartbeat. I stepped over the threshold and felt the floor ask me if I belonged. I told it yes with my spine. Eyes counted me the way a cashier counts change. Dress first. Face next. Then the pause where people decide what story you are about to tell. Adrian kept half a step at my side, not in front of me and not behind. His assistant peeled off to the right, already intercepting a photographer whose lens had the greedy look of a hand. Vivian stood near a tower of white flowers. The dress she wore was silk that remembered every movement, a column of light with a train that needed its own map. She took in Adrian, then me, then she arranged her mouth into sweet and did not invite the rest of her face to join. The groom at her side wore a smile that pressed too hard. Marco. He finished his scan and squeezed Adrian's hand a second longer than decent men do. Welcome, Vivian said. How thoughtful to bring a guest. Her eyes touched my hair, my shoes, my clutch. There was a moment where she looked for the label on my dress and failed to find it. A soft frustration slid across her gaze and was gone. I am Lena, I said, steady. Thank you for having us. The coordinator clapped to summon attention, gloss on a clipboard swinging like a little bell. Staff flowed in polite lines toward their posts. The crowd returned to its circles and its stories. Adrian angled us toward a quiet pocket near a window where the city threw itself at the glass and left only light. He exhaled once, a controlled thing, and his shoulders found their place. A server paused at my elbow with a tray. Her name tag said Noor in small gold letters. Dark braid. Eyes that saw more than they said. She tipped the tray toward me, just a few degrees, enough to make me smile and enough to let me know she had noticed who I was and how I was holding myself. Sparkling or still? She asked. Still, I said. She set the glass in my hand and slipped a small mint into my palm with the other, a quiet gesture that said you are not alone. When she moved, she did not leave entirely. She took 2 slow steps and stayed in my line of sight, as if she were a lighthouse with legs. The room's music lifted and the photographer breathed into the middle like a man paid to love angles. He called for a candid. People pretended not to arrange themselves while they arranged themselves. The bridesmaids turned their shoulders to show their best sides. The groom's friends adjusted cufflinks and softened jaws. I could feel the air tilt toward the balcony doors where sheer curtains swayed like gossip. A woman near me murmured the word charity. She said it the way a person says the word garnish, a decoration for a plate she did not pay for. Another voice said brave and then laughed into a napkin. A man raised his phone to chest height and pretended to check a message while the lens tilted toward me. Adrian noticed the angle. He slid to block it without turning it into a scene. The man lowered the phone with a shrug that had practiced innocence. Noor drifted back with a fresh tray and a look that landed without sound. She set a folded card on the table by my elbow, then looked me directly in the eye. Not long. Enough. I picked up the card and read the neat hand. Powder room straight ahead. Side corridor on the right leads to a quiet room. Balcony is not safe. I slid the card into my clutch and raised my water as if we were discussing the view. Adrian's mouth curved. He did not ask. He had learned to trust the small signals that keep a person dry when a room calls for rain. The speeches for the rehearsal bled into the speeches for the day. People lifted glasses and told stories that tried to be tender and landed just this side of sharp. The designer in the bright sneakers told a joke that made the room loosen by a notch. The band skimmed over a chorus everyone liked to pretend they knew. The photographer caught Vivian's profile at the exact angle she preferred, and she let him have it with the ease of someone who never forgets her light. I kept moving the way a person swims past a current she does not want to be caught in. I let my face be polite and my eyes be honest. I studied the corners. People who plan traps love corners. The doors to the balcony opened and closed with lazy rhythm. On the far edge, a man with a camera lingered, his attention fixed not on the couple but on the threshold where a person might step alone for air. Noor passed and touched the base of my glass with one finger. A sign. She tilted her head toward a service door disguised to look decorative. I let a beat pass so the gesture could blend back into the room. Then I moved, easy as a person looking for a wash of cooler air. Adrian stayed talking with a guest whose suit cost a semester somewhere. He flicked a glance at me and caught Noor's shadow beside mine. He nodded once. His assistant materialized beside him to hold the conversation in place while I slipped down the side corridor. The sound changed by degrees. Carpet to tile. Music to the hum of vents and the fraction voices of staff who keep days like this from falling apart. The service hall smelled like lemons and line orders. A florist crouched by a bucket of peonies, coaxing a stubborn stem into line with the care of a watchmaker. She smiled at me, tired and sweet, and went back to her work. Noor moved ahead and held a narrow door with her hip. A small room breathed beyond it. Kettle, cups, a sink, a chair, a window high enough to make larceny pointless. She slid inside and I followed, and she shut the door with her palm so it would not click. "You do not know me," she said, voice low and even. "But I know rooms like that and the people who dislike being told no. The balcony is watched by a man who has been promised money for a shot that hurts you. Someone told the staff you might wander. You will not. Not tonight." "Thank you," I said, and I meant it in more than one direction. She set a second glass down and poured from a pitcher that sweated a line onto the tray. Her hands moved with the calm of a person who can stand still while saving a life. "There is more," she said. "In the corridor on the other side of the ballroom, there is a small office they have turned into a coat room. People are using it to whisper." I did not stand close enough to hear all of it. I heard enough to know it was not kind. "If you want to listen, I will show you the door. If you want to leave, I will walk you to the car. Either way, I am here." The kettle ticked. The music hit a swell. A burst of laughter rolled down the vents and thinned as it came. I took a sip of water and let it settle. The back of my mind drew a map. Balcony is a trap. Coat room is a mouth that thinks the walls eat words. "Show me the door," I said. We slipped back into the service hall. Noor took a left, then a narrow right, past racks of clean glasses and a crate of candles waiting to be replaced when the wax fell below the line. A staff elevator opened and empty carts slid out like silent animals. We waited, then moved again, footsteps barely there. At the end of the corridor, a door stood open by an inch. A sliver of light cut across the floor. Voices threaded through the gap, low and roughened by drink and confidence. I stopped with my shoulder to the wall and breathed out once. Noor stood a pace behind me, eyes on the turn that would give us an exit if the floor decided to tilt. Inside, a man said a word that used my name like a garnish. Another voice answered with a laugh that had teeth. I could pick out Marco's smooth bite and the measured hush of someone trying to look generous while being cruel. The air in the hall cooled. My hand found the wall. Dust met skin. The paint felt new and slick. I leaned in that fraction that turns sound from blur to sense. The next sentence came clear and easy, like a hook thrown toward water that thinks it is safe. The coat room was a borrowed office with too much mirror and not enough conscience. The door was cracked just enough to pull sound through. Noor stood a step behind me, weight balanced like a dancer who knew exits better than applause. Inside, glass clinked, a jacket rasped across a hanger, and voices rolled in low waves that thought walls were oceans. "Charity looks good on camera," a man said. "Especially when it matches the dress code." Marco answered with a silkier knife. "It matches the guest. He loves the story. A woman from the street. She is the perfect lesson for the night." A third voice slid in, the tone of a manager of secrets. "Photographer is ready. Balcony at dusk. A single shot. Bride alone in frame is old news. Woman alone in frame is the headline." A short scrape of ice in a glass. Then Vivian, smooth and bright like a coin fresh from a drawer. "She will drift. They always do. Ask someone to offer her air. Someone kind. Guide her toward the door. Give her a minute to stare at the water and think about her good fortune. Then let the city do the rest." The room laughed without volume. It still landed like a slap. I let the words pass through me and not into me. The trick I had learned on nights when the world mistook my body for a place to park its guilt. Noor's breath touched the back of my hand, quiet and steady. She lifted 2 fingers. We moved away from the door and let the gap close with the softest kiss of wood. We walked the service hall like it was a note slid under a tray. No alarm. No rush. Only the shape of a plan learning to breathe. Back in the ballroom, light had turned to a richer gold. The river leaned into evening. The band smoothed its edges. A photographer hovered near the balcony with his lens tilted at the threshold, not at the couple. I saw a staffer glance toward me, then toward the doors. I smiled at her the way you smile at a child caught stealing sugar. She looked down and rearranged napkins that were already straight. Adrian found me by the window, the glass throwing the city across his suit like a second skin. He read my face and let his own settle. "They will try the balcony," I said. "They will try to make me a picture you cannot defend without looking like a fool." He blinked once, slow and deliberate. "How do you want to move?" "I stay in the room," I said. "I do not give them a frame. If anyone asks me to step outside, I will treat the invitation like a spilled drink and sidestep it without making a speech." He nodded, then glanced at the far corner where the doors breathed in and out on their shears. His assistant joined us, soft on her feet, all observation. "Staff have been told again," she said. "No balcony. If anyone insists, they will find the lock changed." "Good," I said. "There is one more thing. If I speak later, I do it where the chandeliers meet, not in shadow. If I use a microphone, I hold it like a tool, not a trophy." Adrian's mouth lifted at one edge. "Understood." A second wave of guests arrived with the fresh energy of people who think nothing has happened yet. The room thickened with perfume and soft noise. Noor passed with a tray, and the smallest curve of her fingers told me she had heard another piece. She took 2 steps behind me and whispered near my shoulder, careful and quick. "They will also bait him," she said. "A toast about generosity. A joke about warm meals. The goal is a scene. If he reacts, the camera gets 2 stories for the price of 1. I turned my wrist so my fingers could brush her tray, a thank you no one would mark. She moved on. The music shifted into a song that loved people who did not know how to dance. Vivian floated toward us in her column of silk, bouquet held like a scepter she forgot to bow with. Marco drifted a step behind, smile sharpened to a fine edge. She greeted a cluster of donors with the bloom of someone who understands the economy of attention. Then she turned to Adrian and me as if we were a pair of portraits in a hallway she had just decided to notice. "Lena," she said, tasting the name. "Adrian speaks of you with admiration. It is very moving." "Does it move you?" I asked, light as an umbrella set down in a corner. "The admiration." She smiled like a teacher who will mark you down later for wit. "It moves me to ask if you are comfortable. The balcony is beautiful at this hour. The air does something to the river. It is worth seeing." Adrian finessed a step, not blocking, not obeying, a clean refusal made out of posture. I kept my eyes on Vivian, whose pupils tightened by a breath when the move did not land. "The air is good in here," I said. "I prefer the company." Marco leaned in, smooth voice carrying the weight of his grin. "A woman who knows where she stands. Rare. Refreshing. Costly," I said, and watched his grin check itself before it kept going. Noor appeared with a tray and slid it between us, and the invitation like a length of velvet rope between a crowd and a stage. Vivian took a glass she did not need and drifted on, nursemaids trailing the train. Marco let his eyes cling to mine a second too long and then followed, the smell of his cologne leaving a line that would have been useful to track if I had wanted to hunt. The first dance started, a rehearsal of grace for photographers who loved geometry. I let the room's center be theirs. I watched the corners, where plans like to hatch and grow legs. A bridesmaid whispered to a groomsman near the side door. He nodded, then peeled away and aimed himself toward a point midway between me and the balcony. I adjusted my stance and moved closer to a group telling a story about a childhood dog. My presence made the groomsman abort his course and pretend he had always meant to lift a tray. Across the floor, the photographer tested the doors. They did not budge. His expression went flat as if he had been promised an easy shot and found a locked gate. He lifted his lens to the chandeliers instead and pebbled the ceiling with light. The speeches began. The designer went first, sneakers shining like a joke he refused to explain. He kept it kind and short. The band tucked a laugh under the end of his toast. Then a cousin no one knew took a turn and spoke too long. The room softened its attention and let him use it like a pillow. He finished with a flourish and a bow that missed the mark. Marco stepped forward with the confidence of a man who has never learned a lesson he did not write himself. He lifted his glass. He smiled at the room. He turned to the couple with the practiced pride of a host who loves the sound of his own name. The microphone clicked into his hand and the band shortened its notes until all that remained was a polite hum. "To love," he said. "To luck. To the kind of kindness that gives a woman a warm meal and a dress when she needs it most." He did not look at me. He let the room do that work. Laughter skimmed the surface, not loud, not soft. It found me and tried to stick. I did not let it. I placed my water on the nearest table with care. I pressed my palm flat on the linen and felt the weave give back, thread by thread. Adrian's hand tightened on his glass and then eased. He was learning too. Marco went on, smooth as a salesman in a mirror. To the hearts that open their doors. To the souls who are brave enough to accept an invitation. It takes a special kind of courage to show up when you have nothing to wear. I felt Noor's presence on my left, not touch, something like a shadow that knows which wall to soften. The room held its breath because it loves a moment that tastes like blood. I let the heat rise in my throat and pass. I let the words arrange themselves in a line that would not tremble. Adrian's eyes found mine. He did not ask. He awaited. The assistant stood at the back with her phone in her hand, not recording, ready to cut sound if I gave her the smallest sign. I shook my head by a fraction. The microphone in Marco's hand caught the way my breath entered and left me, calm and measured, audible only to the person I would choose to be. Marco raised his glass higher. "To charity," he said, and the word landed like a coin thrown at a street musician. I picked up my glass. I stepped forward into the center where the chandeliers met. The shears at the balcony did not move. The photographer did not look at the doors. He looked at me. I set my glass on the edge of the stage. I held out my hand for the microphone. Marco smiled as if I were an echo finally arriving. I took the mic. It sat in my palm like a tool, not a trick. I looked at the room that had not been built for me and found the places where the light was honest. No one spoke. Silence has a shape when people want it to break. I felt it press around my shoulders. I let it settle. The band found the key of waiting and played it without sound. I lifted the microphone and drew breath, not for a plea, not for a scene, for a sentence that would swing the room on its hinge and make it face a different direction. The microphone was cooler than I expected, a small weight that knew how to turn a room into a single ear. Marco's grin held steady beside me, the kind of smile that bets on echo rather than voice. I could feel the crowd lean forward, not from kindness, from hunger. Chandeliers trembled by a hair as the air shifted. Noor stopped 3 steps back, tray balanced, eyes level, a quiet guard holding a line most people could not see. I let the first beat pass so my breath could find its pace. I thought of the bridge and the bench that remembered bones. I thought of the old man under my blanket and the way his shoulders had stopped shaking when the wool found him. I thought of the night rain and a business card warming against my ribs. I let those things step into the room with me, so this would not be a scene built by strangers. Adrian stayed by the edge of the stage, hands at his sides, jaw unclenched. He did not move to save me. He had learned that I did not need saving. The assistant stood near the soundboard with a thumb ready to lower the volume if a man tried to take the mic back by force. The photographer adjusted his focus with the reverence of a hunter who has decided to stop aiming at animals. I tested the mic with the softest breath, and it caught the sound the way a good instrument does, clean and even. The speakers gave nothing back but a quiet hum. The band fell to a hush that felt like a held note, neither rising nor fading, the pure key of attention. Vivian stood with her bouquet held low, face turned toward me as if she had invented the angle. Marco's glass hovered near his mouth, a prop waiting for direction. A bridesmaid with glitter on her eyelids squeezed another's hand until the knuckles blanched. The doors to the balcony stayed closed. Sheer curtains lifted an inch and fell. Somewhere in the back, a man who had been promised an easy picture lowered his camera and checked the lock he could not pick with a lens. The first words a person says to a crowd are a doorway. Step wrong and you stumble in the frame. I let the memory of a kitchen table from a long time ago rise up, the table where my mother taught me to hold a glass without shaking and to speak without asking the room for permission. I let the memory touch my mouth, and then I let it go. The mouth must belong to the present, or it will betray you. I will be brief, I said to myself, not out loud. Brief is a scalpel when people expect a speech. My thumb found the small ridge on the mixed body, a tiny seam where plastic meets wire. I held on to that seam like it was a railing across a narrow bridge. Nor shifted her weight to her back foot, a sign that the house staff recognized the moment and would not let it be spoiled by a clumsy hand. The coordinator, to her credit, lowered her clipboard and waited like a person who understands that sometimes the schedule serves the night rather than the other way around. I scanned the room once, not to measure approval, to set the truth in my eyes. This was not a room built for me. It would live after I left. But for one slice of time, it would listen. The trick was to give it something it could not spit out and still call itself tasteful. Marco angled closer as if to share his spotlight. I took a step sideways so his light missed me by an inch. He felt the miss and his smile thinned. Vivian raised her chin by the width of a pearl and watched without blinking. Her stillness was a coin. I knew better than to pay with it. The first dance tried to restart, a few notes testing the water, then thought better of it and quieted. My heart learned the drum part in that space and kept time without panic. The room gave back the pace I set. That was the hinge. That was the part most people do not notice when they tell the story later. Not the chandelier, not the dress, not the mic. The breath. I lifted the microphone. My name is Lena, I said, and the sound of it steadied everything inside me that remembered hunger and wind and the small ceremony of sharing a blanket with a stranger. No one interrupted. It is amazing what a room will allow when you deny it the option of laughing first. I looked at the couples who had spent the afternoon practicing their smiles in phone screens. I looked at the men who had not learned to lower their voices when they said a woman's name for sport. I looked at the servers who move like tide and keep nights like this from tipping into mess. I looked at Adrian, who held my gaze and did not ask me for a version of this moment that would make him look good. He asked for nothing. He stood in it. I let the second sentence build itself. Not a defense. Not a plea. A line spoken the way a person closes a latch on a gate. I have slept under bridges and I have laughed on good couches, and the thing that decides whether a night is decent is not the ceiling. It is whether people remember to be people. A murmur tried to rise. It failed. Noor's chin tipped and the murmur lay down. Marco's mouth twitched like a bad idea that wanted out. He raised his glass again, as if he could steer the moment with a clink. I did not give him a clink. I let my words be the only sound. I could feel the toast taking shape beside me, taller than spite and simpler than revenge. It had 3 parts. A name for kindness that is not a performance. A name for theft when love is treated like a trick. A name for the door you leave open for yourself when the room thinks it owns you. I set those 3 parts on the table of my breath and kept my hands steady. I glanced once toward the balcony, not to feed the camera, to remind the room that I knew its oldest trap and would not step into it just to make the night interesting. The photographer understood the look. He lowered his lens and pointed it toward the ceiling, catching the crystal in a way that turned knives into rain. The coordinator's eyes watered from holding still too long. The assistant's thumb hovered above the fader and did not move. Adrian's shoulders settled another fraction, a visible measure of a man trying his first full hour without reaching for a lever. I drew one more breath. The band found my inhale and sat inside it like a musician learning a new song on the fly. The crowd leaned, then did the strangest thing a crowd can do. It listened. The first line of the toast rose to the back of my teeth. It sat there, clean and ready, with all the parts aligned like plates on a shelf before a storm. I did not smile. I did not hurry. "Raise your glasses," I said, and the room obeyed without knowing what it was about to hold. Raise your glasses, I say, and the room does what rooms like this do. Crystal lifts. Shoulders square. Breath holds. My name is Lena, I say, voice steady. I am lifting this glass to the kind of kindness that is not a costume. The kind that looks a person in the eye and sees a life, not a project. Kindness does not steal a name. Kindness does not turn hunger into decoration. It feeds and steps back. It helps and stays quiet. It keeps the door open without asking for a picture. A ripple moves, small as a fish under dark water, nor stands behind the last row of chairs, tray anchored, spine tall. The band rests on a single soft chord that feels like a floor. I lift this glass to truth, I say, because love without truth is a theft. It takes what is not offered. It spends someone else's peace and calls the bill romance. Some goodbyes happened here long before today. Everyone who needed to know knew. The rest of us learned the way people always learn. Through tone, through timing, through a silence that had fingerprints on it. Truth is not cruel. It is clean. It lets a person heal where the lie was sitting. Adrian does not move. He lets the words stand on their own legs. Vivian's bouquet sinks by an inch. Marco's smile tightens until it looks like a seam. I lift this glass to dignity. I say, mine, yours. The staff who carry trays until their hands forget to shake. The guests who arrived with hearts open. Dignity is not a spotlight. It is a boundary. Tonight, I will not be the picture on a balcony. I will not be the joke between courses. I walked into this room with my name, and I will walk out with it. The photographer lowers his lens. The coordinator lets her clipboard fall against her thigh, a soft thud in a still room. Nor tilts her chin a fraction. The doors to the balcony stay shut, Shears breathing like a sleeping thing. I lift this glass to the couple, I say, and I look at them because anything less would be a trick. May your marriage learn honesty before it learns spectacle. May it earn quiet before it asks for applause. May your house be the kind where people know which drawer keeps the bandages and which shelf keeps the spare buttons, because you will need both. I take a sip. A small one. Water, not wine. The room follows because it does not know what else to do. Glass touches mouth. A hush moves across the carpet like smoke deciding to disappear. For the rest of us, I say, may we never confuse charity with kindness, secrets with love, or performance with dignity. May we remember to be people. I lower the microphone by an inch and the soundboard stays where it is. I do not bow. I do not smile for the camera. I set the mic on the piano lid, a soft click that sounds like a latch finding its place. My glass goes to the nearest table. My fingers leave no mark on the linen. Silence fills the room to the edges. Real silence, Not the kind that begs to be broken, the kind that understands weight. The chandeliers hum on their chains. The river presses its light against the glass. A server coughs once behind a closed door, and even that sound learns to be careful. Vivian blinks. Just once. Marco shifts, and the seam of his smile unthreads by a millimeter. A bridesmaid lets out the breath she has been hoarding. Adrian's shoulders settle, the smallest surrender to the idea that a moment can stand without him holding it up. Noor steps into the aisle by a step, her body a slim railing if the crowd chooses a rush. The assistant watches the balcony, and then the coat room, and then the stage, moving her attention like a quiet metronome for control. The photographer finds the chandeliers again and aims high, catching crystal, catching glow, avoiding faces that might be used by people who did not listen. A man in the third row twitches as if to clap. His date's hand lands on his wrist and stills it. Sound does not break. This is the part one wanted. The pause where meaning has room to breathe. The pause that teaches a room that it can be better than its reflex. I step back from the center. I do not rush. I do not make myself small. I let the space close behind me like a door that was always meant to be on a slow hinge. Adrian does not touch me. He gives me the width of my own breath and the length of my own step. The stage does not try to keep me. The floor learns my stride and makes it easy. At the edge of the crowd, Noor turns her tray by an inch, a signal that the path is clear. The assistant slides a fingertip over the fader, raising the band from hush to the softest current, enough to give the room something gentle to hold on to. The conductor lifts 2 fingers. The pianist finds the chord he had been saving. The drummer touches the rim with a brush that sounds like rain, remembering how to be kind. I stop by the window where the river wears the city like jewelry. My hand finds the cool pane. My reflection looks back at me and does not flinch. The ring of condensation from my glass sits on the tablecloth like a small moon. It will dry. It will leave no stain. In the mirror of the glass, I see a shape detach from the cluster around the couple and begin to move. Marco. Not fast. Not slow. A line drawn by a man who still believes rooms belong to him. Noor's tray tilts again, a fraction more. The assistant's eyes lift from the board to the path he is choosing. The silence breaks itself at last, a single sound from the back of the hall. Not applause. A chair leg scraping, the honest noise of wood against floor. The band breathes and readies. The room leans, deciding what kind of night it plans to be. I keep my palm on the window and let the cool travel up my arm until the heat in my throat learns its own limits. The toast is done. The words have their work now. The rest is movement. Behind me, a hand lands on a microphone stand. The metal rings once, delicate as a bell. A single hand closes on the microphone stand. Metal gives a thin ring, and then another sound cuts across it. A clap. Just one. It comes from the back, flat and honest. A second clap joins it. Then a third. Not thunder. Not a standing ovation. A small weather change you only notice when the wind turns your face. Marco freezes with his fingers still on steel. The smile on his mouth loses its polish by the width of a thread. Vivian raises her bouquet as if to summon charm. It does not answer. The band lifts a careful ribbon of music to give the room something gentle to hold. The coordinator exhales. The chandeliers stop trembling and hang like quiet frost. Noor moves first. A step forward, tray angled to create a lane. She intercepts a photographer who had started toward the balcony again out of habit rather than hope. He takes one look at her spine and drifts the other way. The assistant slides beside the soundboard and taps the fader a breath upward. Conversations restart in small, uncertain braids. Adrian comes toward me through the soft noise. He stops at a respectful distance. His voice is pitched for me and for anyone within 3 feet who needs to understand the new terms of this room. Do you want to stay, he asks, or leave? Your call. Leave, I say. Cleanly. He nods. No rush. No grab for a headline. He turns to the assistant. She already has it. The side exit. The car. A route that passes by no cameras and no tempting openings to night air. We move. Nor folds into our line like a guard who has done this on a dozen different nights for a dozen different reasons. A cousin steps into our path by accident and finds himself gently redirected by the edge of her tray. A groomsman looks ready with a joke and then sees my face and chooses water instead. Halfway to the doors, the photographer who lowered his lens earlier lifts it again. He aims high. Crystal. Glow. City. He does not aim at my face. I meet his eye for a heartbeat. He lowers the camera and gives me a nod that is not an apology and not a plea. Only respect. I give it back. We pass the coat room. The door is closed. Behind it a voice whispers sharp. Another answers with sugar that hides the blade. Nor flicks a glance at the handle and then at me. I keep walking. Some truths do not need witnesses to do damage. They do that work alone. Vivian cannot let us exit without touching the moment. She appears at the edge of our lane with a smile that has learned nothing. The bouquet glows like a small moon. Marco lingers 3 steps back, cologne first, jaw tight, fingers worrying the stem of his glass. Lena, she says, turning my name into a fine piece of porcelain. Thank you for your words. They were so very brave. Brave is her new word for woman who refuses to be bait. I do not accept it. I do not hand it back. I told the truth, I say. It belongs to the room now. Her eyes flick past me to Adrian, then back. Calculation swims to the surface and pretends to be kindness. Perhaps you will step onto the balcony for a breath before you go, she says. Fresh air is a gift. The assistant is already between us, all silk and iron. The balcony is closed, she says. House rule. Marco takes a single step forward. His smile is a seam. A pity, he says. The view is unforgettable. Some things are meant to be forgotten, I say, and I keep moving. The shears breathe as we pass. The side doors open onto a quiet corridor. Carpet turns to tile under my feet. My flats grip and release with a soft rhythm like a heartbeat calming. Noor peels off at the last corner and presses a small card into my palm as she fades. A name. A number. The words call if anyone follows. I squeeze her fingers once and slip the card into the clutch. The elevator arrives on a bell that knows how to whisper. In the mirrored walls, I see us as a line. Noor waving once from the corridor. The assistant tapping a message to the driver. Adrian in a dark suit that looks lighter than it did an hour ago. Me in a black dress with sleeves and pockets and the new posture of a woman who walked into a room that was not built for her and walked out with her name intact. The doors open into a service lobby that smells of lemon and starch. The driver waits beside a black car that knows how to arrive without being noticed. He opens the rear door and steps back. Night air touches my face with the cool hand of a friend who does not need to speak. As I slide in, a voice reaches us from the main entrance. Not loud. Not soft. A warning disguised as a wish. Marco. I do not turn. Adrian does. The man lifts his glass in a private toast that never reaches his eyes. To courage, he says, and to men who confuse it with disobedience. Adrian's reply is clean. To men who learn the difference, he says, and he gets in the car. We pull away. The city widens. Rivers of light pour around us as if the streets are trying to wash their hands. I let my head rest against the seat and let my shoulders find their level. The bouquet of the night recedes. The flower that remains is called relief, and it does not smell like victory. It smells like the absence of a bad plan. Adrian watches the road. He speaks without the need to steer me with his words. There is a room on the 12th floor of a different hotel. Your name is on the key. No surprises. A kettle. Fresh towels. A bolt that locks. If you want it. I want it, I say. He nods. There will be a phone on the desk. New number. No one has it but you. Keep it or toss it. Tomorrow I can help with papers if you ask. Work. A place. Only if you ask. I would like to see you again. Only if you want to be seen. I taste the words and find no hidden hook. The car draws a clean line through the city. We pass a billboard with Vivian's face selling a perfume that smells like everything costs more than it should. We pass a bus stop where a teenage couple leans into each other as if the world is a good idea. We pass the overpass where the bench remembers bones. My blanket is gone from the old man's shoulders. He is not there. I choose to believe he found a bed tonight. At the hotel, the night manager does not flinch when he sees me. He hands over a key card in a small envelope and speaks my name like it belongs where it is. The elevator rises with the sound of a promise keeping pace with itself. The hallway is clean and the carpet does not try to remember anyone. The door opens on a soft room with a window that looks over the river. The kettle gleams. The towels hang folded and thick. Adrian stays in the doorway. He does not enter. He leaves the decision in the room with me. The driver is yours in the morning, he says. Or the afternoon. Or not at all. I nod. Thank you. No more words are needed. He steps back. The door closes. Silence arrives with its hands empty, and that is exactly right. I set the clutch on the desk. I turn the bolt. I stand in the center of the room and listen to a quiet that does not ask me to perform. My phone buzzes once. A message from a number I do not know. Nor. 3 lines. You were seen. The balcony is empty. Sleep. I boil water and watch the steam rise the way fog does when a river gets warm at dawn. I wrap my hands around the mug and let them remember what heat feels like without fear. I walk to the window and lean my palm against the glass. The city looks back without judgment. A soft sound at the door. Not a knock. Paper sliding on carpet. I cross the room and pick up an envelope with no name on the front. Inside is a single photograph. The chandelier, the glow, a sliver of the room held in crystal. No faces. No bait. On the back, a neat hand has written 4 words. The story is changing. I lift my head. In the hallway, footsteps pause, then move on. I set the photo on the desk beside the keycard and the phone with a number that is mine. The kettle clicks as it cools. The bolt holds. Outside, the river turns a darker silver and the city takes a breath it has been holding all night. I let my own breath match it, slow and even, and feel the room tilt toward morning with a question it can keep to itself. I woke before the city did. The room on the 12th floor held its quiet like a promise that did not need to be signed. I made tea and stood by the window while the river pulled silver through the dark. The bolt on the door sat where I left it. The photograph from last night lay on the desk, chandelier and glow, the back marked with 4 careful words. The story is changing. I showered and let hot water rinse the ballroom out of my hair. The black dress went back on its hanger. I pulled on the sweater the color of bread and laced my boots tight. In the mirror, I looked like a person who had slept and meant it. The phone on the desk was still mine. No one had the number yet. I put it in my pocket and felt the weight settle, small and real. Downstairs, the night manager nodded like we were already used to seeing each other. Outside, the air was new and clean. The driver rolled to the curb and touched 2 fingers to the brim of his cap. Where to? He asked. Community center on 5th, I said. Then the shelter. Then we will see. The center smelled like pencils and floor polish and the kind of hope that keeps its shoes on. A woman at a folding table slid a clipboard toward me with a smile that was all business in the best way. Her badge said Myra. She asked what I wanted my first month to look like. Not someday. 30 days. I said paperwork, a job that pays before it performs, and a place I choose with my own key. She said we could do the first 2 by Friday if I could sit still for forms and keep my phone on. She said the third would take both patience and stubborn. I told her I had enough of each. She laughed like we had traded a secret and handed me a pen. While I wrote my name on lines that wanted to forget it, the phone buzzed once. Adrian. A short text that understood morning. Outside with coffee. Only if you want it. I finished the last line, handed the clipboard back to Myra, and stepped into the light that reaches the lobby only after it has learned the windows. Adrian waited by the door with 2 cups and a paper bag that smelled like butter in a good mood. His suit was the kind that stops trying when the tie is off. He had left his tie off. He looked at me, then at the form in my hand, not prying, reading the shape. He held out the cup. Strong, he said. Good, I said. We sat on the low wall by the steps. People came and went with clipboards and tote bags and the kind of shoulders you get from lifting your own life. He passed me the paper bag. Inside was a croissant with sugar caught in its folds. I ate half and let the flakes become a small constellation on my sweater. I ended the invitations from men who turn rooms into games, he said, voice even. I shut down 2 deals that were built on secrecy and a grin. It cost something. It was worth it. I let the words sit between us until they found their level. He did not rush to dress them up. I am enrolling here, I said. Forms first. ID next. They will send me to a temp agency that does not take a cut from the hungry. Myra says the hotel across the river needs a night clerk who can count change in her head and does not mind steady quiet. Do you want a referral? He asked. I want Noor's number, I said. She will tell me if the place keeps its promises. He smiled, small and honest. Already in your phone. Check under Noor, not full name. She chose what to share. I looked. It was there with a single line beneath. Call if anyone shadows you. I texted her a thank you. A second later the phone hummed. You did the hard part, she wrote. The balcony is still locked. The staff sent the photographer home before dawn. If you take the night clerk job, the manager is decent. Bring your calm. It is needed. I put the phone away and felt the morning tip toward the kind of day that stacks up into something solid if you let it. Adrian sipped his coffee and watched the city yawn. He did not try to fill the silence. He did not try to name what we were building. He let the sidewalk be the narrator. I am not moving into your world, I said. Not as a project. Not as a story. If I see you, it will be in places where we both have to listen to the room and pay the bill. Done, he said. Public places. Plain tables. No announcements. No cameras. I am learning how to leave my name at the door and pick it up on the way out. The driver idled with patience. A bus sighed to a stop across the street and opened its doors like a mouth that has learned to keep its language gentle. I folded the croissant bag closed and tucked it under my arm to throw away. Small neatness matters. It says a thing to the day. At the shelter, I checked on the old man who had borrowed my blanket. The cot was made. The chart by his bed said discharged to his brother's address. I felt the floor come up a quarter inch under my feet, the way ground does when it remembers that holding is part of its job. I left a note with the desk. If he came back, tell him Lena said the soup worked. On the sidewalk, Adrian walked beside me without touching. We stopped at a crossing and watched a group of kids thread scooters between legs and bags with the loose grace of people who still trust light to be there when they turn. He cleared his throat the way a person does when he is moving a heavy box from one shelf to another. I would like to see you again, he said. At the park with the loud geese. At the museum on free day when the guard likes to explain the paintings more than the guide does. At a diner that forgets to wipe the chalkboard but remembers your tea. First I have an interview, I said. Then I have a shift if it goes well. Then I have a room to find where the window opens and the bolt holds. If those things happen, we can walk after. I will fit my wanting around your calendar, he said, and it sounded like a sentence he could practice without using it as proof later. Before noon, Myra called to say the temp agency wanted me at 2 for intake, and the night clerk manager could see me at 4 if I arrived with a steady gaze and a clean line on the form. I told the driver we were done and that I would walk. Adrian handed me a small notebook, plain brown cover, no logo, and a pen that wrote like it trusted the page. For lists, he said. Only if you like lists. I like lists, I said. They turn air into plans. He nodded. We stood there with a city around us that did not care whether we got this right. It was a relief. I shook his hand like a person, not a symbol. He squeezed once. He did not linger. I headed toward the river and took the long path that runs under the maples. A breeze turned the water into a sheet of tin and then back into silk. I practiced answers in my head that did not sound like a plea. When the bridge came into view, I stopped and looked under it. The bench was empty. The drip from the seam had slowed. I slid the umbrella from the loop on my tote and set it on the concrete with the handle facing outward. Someone would need it. Maybe not today. Soon. The afternoon stacked up into the shape Myra had drawn. Intake at 2 with a man who liked to say good choice when I picked the line that paid weekly. Interview at 4 in a lobby that smelled like lemon and a little ambition. The manager asked if I could count a drawer without talking and recognize trouble without liking it. I said yes to both. He asked if I could stand all night without losing my kindness. I said I could learn how. Tonight, he said. If you want it. I want it, I said. By 6, Noor texted a thumbs up and a sentence that read like a blessing. Night lobbies keep secrets. Keep the ones that are yours. I ate a sandwich from a cart and wrote a list in the plain notebook. Shoes, locker, a second sweater, 2 nights at the hotel under my name until the first check lands. At 7:50, the lobby lights shifted to their evening version. The desk bell ticked once when a guest leaned a book bag against it. I stood where the job asked me to stand and felt a new rhythm settle into my bones. The door opened. Adrian walked in and stopped at the edge of the rug. He wore a coat that did not announce itself and a look that understood the line. Tea on your break, he said, voice low. Across the street. 10 minutes. Or another day. Another day, I said. After the first check clears. He nodded. He put his hand over his heart for half a second, not performance, a habit he was teaching himself to use instead of a speech. He turned and left. The glass doors sighed. The night took its place. Midnight came quiet and then not. Keys clicked. A woman cried a little in the elevator and pulled herself together by the time the doors opened. I found the right answer to a question about parking without looking at the map. At 3, the lobby hummed like a refrigerator. At 4, a delivery kid dropped off a crate of flowers for a breakfast meeting and waved at me like we were already in on the same joke. At 5, the street began to glow again. I closed the drawer and counted it twice. I signed the sheet with my new careful signature. I stepped outside into air that tasted like beginnings. My phone buzzed. 2 messages. One from Myra with the words ID approved. One from Noor with a picture of sunrise on the river and 3 words beneath. You kept it. I looked at the picture and then at the real thing. The city had learned my name in a new way. It did not clap. It kept moving. I fell into step with it, boots steady, sweater warm, a small notebook in my pocket, and a shift on the schedule that belonged to me. Dawn tips the city into a softer kind of silver, and the river learns to shine without trying. I locked the lobby drawer, sign my name with a careful hand I have been practicing, and step out into air that smells like wet stone and coffee. The night clerk keys go into my pocket with the small weight of something earned. On the other side of the street, a delivery cart rattles, and a woman hums the part of a song where the chorus usually goes. It is early enough for beginnings. My room has a door that shuts and a bolt that holds. There is a window that opens and a radiator that ticks when it remembers to be warm. The rent is paid through the end of the month. My name is on the mailbox in letters that look like they mean it. I keep a plain notebook by the sink for lists. Groceries. Shift swaps. Shoes to be resold. A number for the mechanic who lives above the bakery and works for cash in the afternoons. The umbrella sits in the corner by the door, handle facing outward, ready to be borrowed by whatever future needs it. The photograph from that night rides the inside of my closet, clothespin holding it in place above the stack of folded sweaters. Chandeliers. Glow. No faces. On the back, 4 words in a careful hand. The story is changing. I touch the edge with 2 fingers before I head out. Not for luck. For memory. At the community center, Myra signs for a package with my name on it and hands it over with a grin that could cut rope. Inside are 2 shirts, plain and strong, a pair of socks that know what a long shift is, and a small card with a number I already know. Nor added a line. Night lobbies keep secrets. Keep the ones that are yours. She stops by sometimes on her way home, hair damp from the kitchen sinks and the walk, eyes bright with the kind of tired that comes from doing your job well. We drink tea from paper cups and count the moments where the room could have turned and did not. Adrian learns to leave his name at the door. Twice a week, after my shift ends, we meet at a bench near the loud geese. He brings bread because he cannot help himself, and I bring the rule that we feed the birds last, not first, so we can keep our hands still while we talk. He tells me about contracts he did not sign and parties he did not attend. He says them like facts, not favors. I tell him about a guest who wanted to argue with gravity at 3 a.m. and a delivery kid who whistled through his teeth and made the whole lobby remember it was alive. We go to the museum on free day. A guard with gentle hands explains a painting in words better than the guidebook. The story is 2 colors learning to live in the same frame. We stand and let that be what it is without dragging our own names into it. When we leave, he walks me back to the bus stop and does not try to turn the moment into a promise that would be easier than the work. The bus door folds open. We nod. We keep the calendar steady. Vivian's wedding ran its glossy course and then faded like good perfume. A magazine printed a spread weeks later with images that looked like every other chandelier-crowned room. No balcony shots. No hungry captions. Somewhere in the center of the layout, you can see the edge of Nora's tray and the curve of a shoulder that could be mine and could belong to any woman who chose to stand where the light did not make a trick of her. It looks like an accident. It was not. The photographer sent a note to the community center. He had shown a small series in a quiet gallery by the river. Light on water. 10 prints. Proceeds to the shelter with the stubborn hooks and the clipboards that know everyone by first name. Myra wrote back with a thank you that did not use the word generous. She used accurate and on time. He sent an extra print for the lobby. I framed it with a narrow border and hung it near the sign-in sheet so people could see something beautiful without having to ask for it. On a wet Tuesday, the old man who had borrowed my blanket walks into the night lobby with a wool cap pulled low and a smile like a secret. He asks if the soup worked. I tell him it did. He tells me his brother's sofa is too lumpy and too kind to complain about. We sit with paper cups and talk about whether that only people who sit outside notice. He leaves with a pair of gloves that turned up and lost and found 3 shifts ago and an extra sandwich a conference did not miss. The elevator doors open and close like a punctuation mark that knows its job. Some days the city forgets me. Some days it remembers. Neither is personal. That is a relief. I am learning the way streets wear their stories. Some get washed off by rain. Some sink in and make the pavement stronger. At the end of a long night, I walk past the overpass where the bench remembers bones. The seam in the concrete still leaks. Someone has tied a scrap of blue fabric to the rail like a flag that does not feel the need to wave. I set the umbrella on the ledge and keep moving because stillness is not the only way to honor a place. The hotel manager asks if I can train a new clerk. A girl who writes her name like she is apologizing. We count the drawer together with the drawer open so she can see what numbers look like when they are honest. We work the lobby through the first hour when the floor teaches your legs how to stand. She asks how to tell the difference between a guest who is lost and a guest who wants to make a scene. I tell her to trust the hands. The hands always tell on the face. She listens. She learns. She stands a little taller by dawn. There is a market on Saturdays under the gray bridge with the chipped paint. Musicians play the kind of songs people know without knowing where they first heard them. Noor walks the stalls with me on her day off. She buys tomatoes with the softness still in them. I buy a jar of buttons from a woman who keeps spares because she knows what a tear can do to a dress at the wrong moment. We trade half a loaf of bread for a pint of strawberries and pretend the trade was not already common sense. We sit on the curb and let the city move around us like water does around a rock that minds its own business. One evening rain comes in sheets and the maples along the river lean into it like old friends. My shift ends at dawn and I take the long way home on purpose. Near the park, Adrian stands under a tree with 2 cups and an umbrella that has learned his hand. He does not call my name. He waits until my steps carry me close enough to hear him breathe. "Breakfast," he says. "If you want it." We walk to a diner with windows that fog and a chalkboard that forgets to be wiped. The eggs are eggs. The coffee is strong. We eat and do not turn the table into a stage. He pays because it is his turn. I leave the tip because it is mine. When we step back into the wet, he holds the umbrella so the drip line misses my shoulder. I let him. There are some courtesies a person can accept without owing a story in return. At my door, the bolt waits. I turn it and the room closes the way a room should, with a soft click that sounds like a sentence ending where it belongs. I hang the umbrella by its handle. I set the keys in their dish. I pour water into the plant that has decided to live even though the window faces east and the light is shy. I lie down and listen to the radiator tick and the city breathe. The toast I gave that night belongs to the room that tried to keep it. It can have it. I have the morning, the job, the bench by the geese, the museum guard who loves a painting enough to explain it until even the quietest person in the room understands what blue and gold can do when they decide to share a frame. The story did not save me. It did not need to. I saved what I could carry and learned to set the rest down. The city keeps moving. So do I.